Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome to Purposes Crossed, where I hope that people who are called by Jesus for different purposes cross paths and exchange ideas. This video deals with the superscription for Psalm 7. For the devotion on the main text of Psalm 7, please click the card. The superscription reads a Shiggaion of David, which he sang to the Lord concerning Cush, a Benjaminite. The superscription refers to Cush, a Benjaminite. Now, I've hardly ever devoted time to the superscriptions of the Psalms, but for these devotions, I've started paying attention. And something struck me as particularly odd with this person, Cush the Benjaminite. Cush, in the Old Testament, was the oldest son of Ham, Noah's son. Which Israelite mother would have named her son Cush? If you do not readily see how it would have been unimaginable for an Israelite mother to name her son Cush, consider who Cush's father was. Ham had violated the sanctity of the parent-child relationship, and as a result, Noah cursed his son Canaan in Genesis chapter 9. While Cush himself had done nothing wrong, Ham's actions were frowned upon, and Cush, by association with his father, would also have been considered someone with questionable character. An Israelite mother naming her son Cush would have been as unthinkable as a Christian couple naming their child Judas or Barabbas or Pilate or Herod, Caiaphas. These are names that, because of the history associated with them, would have been quite unthinkable in the minds of any would-be Christian parents. In other words, Cush, the Benjaminite, just could not have been the name given by any Israelite mother to her child. In other words, Cush, the Benjaminite, just could not have been a historical figure. This got me thinking, why would David describe the circumstances surrounding the composition of this psalm by referring to a person who certainly could not have existed? Now, there may be those who might then conclude that the scriptures are in error, since they're referring to a person, Cush, the Benjaminite, who could not have existed. And this may rock the view of scripture that some Christians may have. After all, the superscription clearly intends the reader to think that the psalm is based on something that actually happened in David's life. But how could something actually happen to David if Cush, the Benjaminite, never existed? And does this mean that the Bible is just a collection of poorly spun and strung together fables that have no connection with reality? Or is there something else that is going on? In my view, Cush, the Benjaminite, is a cryptic and subversive reference to Saul, the son of Kish, who was from the tribe of Benjamin. With regard to the relationship between Saul and David, Saul had repeatedly repaid his ally David with harm. And despite being Saul's designated successor, David did nothing to unsettle Saul's rule. David could therefore claim that he had integrity on the basis of which God could find him guiltless in this regard. Now, I grant that this is speculative, and so are all the other views about the identity of Cush the Benjaminite. And we will never be able to determine without doubt the identity of this person, but we can appreciate the importance of context. The different views about the identity of this person leads the interpreters to different ways of interpreting the circumstances surrounding the composition of the psalm. The specifics of the interpretations would change accordingly. So we can see how the vagueness of some of the superscriptions actually contributes to the uncertainty in the interpretation of the psalm. And we need to remind ourselves the superscriptions are scripture. We have no idea whether the superscription was present when the psalm was originally composed, but we do know that they appear in the earliest manuscripts that we have, and without any markers that separate them from the main psalm. This calls for humility and circumspection. We should be willing to accept differing interpretations of the Psalms and perhaps other parts of Scripture, knowing that in many cases we are in the dark about the background to that part of Scripture. And we should not be too dogmatic about our own interpretations of Scripture for the same reasons. Perhaps there is a need to display between ourselves, to borrow the title of one of Clark Pinnock's books, a wideness in God's mercy. Thank you.